Hey, welcome to my booth. I'm Jay. I'm a professional audiobook narrator, and fun fact, different audiobook narrators will narrate differently. It's kind of a no-duh statement, but one of the biggest ways in which different narrators differ is in the way we choose to characterize or perform characters. Dialogue between fictional peoples and how they speak to each other in a book. On one end of the spectrum, there are folks kind of like myself who are good at doing lots of different voices, lots of different accents, lots of different characters that are very distinct from each other. Jim Dale from the Harry Potter series is probably one of the most famous examples. On the other end of the spectrum, a lot of narrators keep everything pretty close to home, close to their natural speaking or performance voice. And for characterizations, they'll use more subtle affectations or textures to shift and make characters distinct. There are a few reasons for this. One, some people, like me, enjoy doing a lot of different accents, a lot of different characters, a lot of different voices. And some folks, maybe that isn't their strength. And that's neither good nor bad. It just lends itself to different types of performances and different sort of artistic inclinations in performance. Another reason is some books, some stories actually lend themselves more so to one version of performance over the other, or in one direction over the other. And one specific realm in which, and the one that we'll be talking about today, in which folks will choose to keep things closer to home, are stories where it's told from the perspective of a singular person, which kind of releases you as the narrator. You're always, to be frank, released of this obligation. You never need to do broad characterizations. We all know it's just one person behind the microphone, and no one's deluded to think it's a multicast recording. That's just something that you can do if you enjoy it. So if you feel obligated to do that, don't. But a lot of narrators in stories where it's one person telling the story or transcribing the story, it makes sense from the perspective of the book that you would keep it close to home. It's one person retelling the story. And so a couple of the ones that we'll look at today, you may recognize them, are Dracula and Moby Dick. Just a couple really short passages of really brief dialogue to sort of exemplify. Both of these, quick plug, are pulled from the Gutenberg Project, or Project Gutenberg here. This is a fantastic resource if you're a narrator looking to practice on a bunch of public domain texts. They're all here, all free to use, the full texts. Great place to go and practice just reading. And additionally, if you want to read these books, they're all free here for you to use. So it's a great, wonderful resource that I highly recommend checking out. Anyway, back to our story here. So if you don't know Dracula, it's written primarily from the perspective of Jonathan Harker, I believe is his name. And there are a couple other characters that take chapters here and there, but he's sort of the main guy through the whole book that's telling the story. So you can see here, I could only see it's told from the first person perspective. It's all from Jonathan Harker's point of view. And this is when we essentially meet Dracula, or one of his cronies, as it were. I can't remember the specifics, to be perfectly honest. But if we touch on the dialogue, we assume that Jonathan Harker's talking all the time. So one might perform it like this. I could see only the gleam of a pair of very bright eyes, which seemed red in the lamplight as he turned to us. He said to the driver, "You were early tonight, my friend." The man stammered in reply, "The English air was in a hurry," to which the stranger replied, "That is why, I suppose, you wished him to go on to Bukovnia. You cannot deceive me, my friend. I know too much, and my horses are swift." As he spoke, he smiled, and the lamplight fell on a hard-looking mouth with very red lips and sharp-looking teeth, as white as ivory. So I don't need to shift very much, and I just use sort of a subtle affectation as Jonathan Harker. If I were to tell you, and then they said this. You are early tonight, my friend. I gave him just arbitrarily a sort of elevated, you are early tonight, my friend. Sort of otherworldly, very calm, very cold presence. And those were really the only things. I keep to my voice and shift it just in terms of my affectation or demeanor. If I shift to be a cold and calculated and very aristocratic, hundreds-of-year-old vampire, I may talk a little bit differently, and this is the only characterization that I need to do. And then if I shift to the next character, who is a townsperson who's been telling Jonathan Harker, listen, bud, get out of here, don't go up there. And then Dracula shows up and is like, what are you telling him? He was in a hurry. I can keep it in my voice, but I'm nervous. I'm talking to this person that I know is an immortal killing machine. The English air was in a hurry. I can't let him know that I'm lying, but I keep it in my voice. And that's sort of the shift that happens very subtly. Let's take a look at the other sample here. So this is from Moby Dick. You may be familiar. It's a kind of famous story, but this is a really interesting passage for a couple of reasons in this specific mode of performance, if we're keeping it close to home, as I say. This bit of dialogue from the landlord is written in a dialect. This word here, it looks funny. If you look this word up in the dictionary, you will not find a definition because this is how this character says certainty. They say it sartainty. It's a sort of, it's a fisherman's dialect. My boy, you'll have a nightmare to a dead certainty, is kind of how you're meant to say it. And it's easier to say it in a sort of piratey voice, if you wish. So in this, we're discussing essentially how he's going to get a room, and he's nervous because there's this harpooner that everyone's talking about. And if you know the book, you know that the harpooner is Queequeg, who's a very large gentleman, very intimidating gentleman, but he's somewhat of a gentle giant in that respect. But in this, we don't know that yet. And so the landlord is kind of giving him a bit of a once-over. Anyway, so let's dive into it and see what happens. One young fellow in a green box coat addressed himself to these dumplings in a most direful manner. My boy, said the landlord, you'll have the nightmare to a dead certainty. Landlord, I whispered, that ain't the harpooner, is it? Oh, no, said he, looking a sort of diabolically funny. The harpooner is a dark-complexioned chap. He never eats dumplings, he don't. He eats nothing but steaks, and he likes 'em rare. The devil he does, says I. Where is that harpooner? Is he here? He'll be here afore long, was the answer. You don't need to shift a lot. It just becomes a little bit of a characterization this way or that way. And an important thing to remember above all is when we read books in our own minds, it's always our own voice taking care of everything. Rarely, when I read a book at least, do I jump into casting with a full Hollywood cast. Usually the characters are still all in my voice. And the he said, she said, they said, all takes care of a lot of work for us. So ostensibly, I could just keep everything in my own voice. And if we wanted to strip it back even further, we could do it completely arbitrarily by taking away all characterization, performing it just with my own voice. And you can do it with an arbitrary shift up or down in pitch or tone. What I mean by that is if I have, say, tracks of performance. So this is a higher pitch track, and this, because I am an anxious character, will be for Ishmael in this instance. And this, because the landlord is more certain, will be his track. So they will be landlord, Ishmael, landlord, Ishmael. Both my voice, no characterization. Let's give it a quick go. My boy, said the landlord, you'll have the nightmare to a dead certainty. Landlord, I whispered, that ain't the harpooner, is it? Oh, no, said he, looking a sort of diabolically funny. The harpooner is a dark-complexioned chap. He never eats dumplings, he don't. He eats nothing but steaks, and he likes 'em rare. The devil he does, says I. Where's that harpooner? Is he here? He'll be here before long, was the answer. So I kind of slipped into a little bit of a characterization because that is my way, but you kind of get the idea that this can be one character, this can be the other character, and this can be the narration tone. So you can use pitch to sort of arbitrarily move things around in the listener's mind without having to do grand characterizations. And that's one way to do it. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. If you have more questions about audiobook narration, let me know. I love these types of videos and explorations, so happy to take on more if you so choose. Again, if you like this stuff and you find it helpful, there's buttons down there. You can check out the description to support us more. And until the next one, be well, and I'll see you there. Toodles.